Okay, everybody, welcome back to another Likutey Moharan shir. This, I believe, is our 29th shir. We have, Baruch Hashem, all inside text-based classes from Likutey Moharan. As always, you could find more of these classes on the Breslov Research Institute.org or on my SoundCloud at Nach Daily or Shaya Sussman. Having a little bit of camera difficulties today. I see people keep going in and out of focus, but we'll just work around that, I guess, to whatever we could. Tonight, I wanted to learn with everyone lesson 24 in Tinyana in Likutey Moharan, the second chelek. And it's actually Rebbe Nachman's most famous words that he said, mitzvah gedola lios besimcha tamid. It's a very, very big mitzvah, always to be happy. And we're going to learn what he said about that inside. Most people don't know the rest of the lesson, other than that he said it's a mitzvah gedol lios besimcha. Most people don't know what he actually said after that. So I keep seeing myself going in and out of focus. It's distracting me. But either way, since most people don't know what he said after that, I thought this would be a good idea to learn with everyone. And also really continuation of last week's lesson, which was lesson 23, which is really piggybacks together with this. These two lessons, teachings, and Likutey Moharan are paired with each other back to back. And Rebbe Nachman actually explains them together. Last week we learned about turning depression into happiness. So this week we're going to learn about how it's a mitzvah to be happy. And I saw actually brought down that this is one of Rebbe Nachman's most important teachings regarding healing. In fact, I'll show everyone over here. There's a book called Wings of the Sun. You guys could see that over here. It's called Wings of the Sun. And it was written by Rav Avraham Greenbaum. And this entire book, it's like a textbook almost, cover's fallen off, is all based on this short lesson that we're going to learn. It's all about healing and emunah and being happy. And it's amazing. I just want to introduce this piece to say that, you know, we're going to talk about the implications of this piece for the next few shiurim. And Amir Tashem will get to, this ties in with the Tikkun HaKlali, Rebbe Nachman's Tikkun HaKlali. Hopefully we'll do a shir on that. We haven't done that yet or spoke about that. And it's amazing how, I just want to highlight this, that he said it's a mitzvah gedol lios besimcha, that it's a big mitzvah to be happy. You know, that when you're sad and you're down and you're depressed, life is extremely, extremely difficult, you know, but when you're happy, it becomes easy to do mitzvahs. The things that seem impossible to you, you start feeling like they're actually possible. So for starters, obviously, when a person's depressed and down, mitzvahs become a burden, life becomes a burden, Torah becomes a burden, and it becomes very hard for a person to feel successful and want to be able to succeed in life. So another just thing that I wanted to highlight over here that he talks about, it's a really big mitzvah to be happy, that we see how much people suffer from depression nowadays. And this is all going to tie into the lesson. So I just really wanted to take a minute to really introduce it. As a therapist, I see in my practice all the time, you know, clients for depression. And some interesting statistics, the National Institute of Mental Health brings that there's 17.3 million adults in the U.S. have suffered at least one major depression disorder, right? So that's 17.3 million adults in the U.S. And with teenagers, it becomes 3.2 million between just the ages of 12 and 17 experience feelings of loneliness and isolation in the U.S. So we see how Rebbe Nachman, I mentioned these not to scare people or anything like that whatsoever, but just to really show how Rebbe Nachman was really so ahead of his time. He was so advanced. He said these things in the early 1800s, and there was no such thing as positive psychology. There's no such thing as mindfulness. There's no such thing as, you know, being happy all the time. It wasn't something that was spoken about, but yet we see Rebbe Nachman, much of modern day psychological ideas can be found here. And we see how Rebbe Nachman really spoke about these times, like what was going on in the middle of Ukraine, right? Nothing. What was going on then? There was a few people around him, and yet he was talking about happiness so much and talking about healing that it seems that Rebbe Nachman was speaking to us nowadays in our generation when we see how many people struggle with this topic. So again, just to show like how far-reaching his mind was and how he spoke about things at the time when people didn't speak about these things. It wasn't really spoken about. It wasn't really something that people addressed. Okay, with that introduction, I'm going to jump into the screen share, and we're going to go a little bit slowly through this piece, but it's going to be well worth it. So I'm pulling up the screen share over here, the short piece over here, and we're going to learn, the first line over here, okay? Mitzvah gedola lios besimcha tamid, right? Lesson Chaf Dalet 24. It's a very big mitzvah to always be constantly happy. And to distance a person from sadness and depression with all their strength. So you see right away, it opens up. I always feel like, we're so hard on ourselves, and we're so hard on ourselves to the extent where we need permission to feel happy with ourselves. So right away, Rebbe Nachman says it's a big mitzvah to be happy. Now, most people don't know the next line, and this is really going to be most of the topic of the lesson tonight. It says, "B'kol hacholos habayim al adam," and all sickness comes upon people. All sickness comes upon people. Kulam ba'in rak mekilkol hasimcha. It all comes on. Why do people get sick? He's saying over here is because there's a kilkol in their simcha. They don't feel happy. Now, I just want to take a minute and really pause on this idea over here. I'm going to stop the screen share. Right? So he says people get sick. Why do people get sick? He says because they're not really happy. That people are filled with anxiety. People are filled with worry. People are filled with fear. People are filled with rage. And all this contributes to a person's not only mental well-being, of course, but into a person's physical well-being. And again, Rebbe Nachman said this way before there were any ideas of the mind-body connection, way before there were any ideas. Hold on, just got to fix this. I keep going out of focus, driving me nuts, right? Rebbe Nachman said this way before any ideas of the mind-body connection, way before any ideas of psychosomatic or anything like that. He said, if you're not happy, so then a person gets sick. All sickness comes from a lack of happiness. And I wanted to bring this book in. I'm not going to read from it. I don't know if you guys have heard of this. This is, I'm actually in the middle of reading it. It's by Dr. John Sarno. A lot of people have heard of him. And this book's actually called The Divided Mind. I actually started reading it a few weeks ago. And Dr. John Sarno's entire method is talking about how our mind actually creates pain for us. The pain is real. It's not fake real. The disorders are real. I'm not saying that. I'm not a medical doctor either. I'm just saying what he says. He was really the first person to introduce this idea of mind-body, the mind-body connection that Rebbe Nachman spoke about already over 200 years ago. He's saying that kol hacholos ba'in rak mekilkol hasimcha, that all sickness comes from a person's lack of happiness. This is what Dr. John Sarno called psychosomatic. And just to share a story on this, I actually did a video on it to really flesh out this, and we'll go further in the piece. We'll see Kabbalistically how all this plays out. That for years, I used to clench my teeth, my back teeth, and I have like fake teeth in the back and all different sorts of things. And I was always wondering, why am I clenching my teeth? So I had all sorts of dental work and all sorts of things like that happened. And I needed to do it, right? But I was still grinding my teeth. So I grinded through the dental work. And someone had introduced me to Dr. John Sarno. This is the second book of his that I'm reading. But someone introduced me to it, or I would say last summer, and I read it. And he talks about how repressed rage and anger really causes us to either grind our teeth. It comes out in all different sorts of sickness. And I actually read the book, and I actually stopped grinding my teeth after. I haven't really ground my teeth since. So, and again, I'm just bringing this to be mechazik, the point that Rebbe Nachman is saying over here, mitzvah gedola lios b'simcha, that it's a very big mitzvah to be happy. V'kol hacholos ba'in rak mekilkol hasimcha, and all sickness comes from lack of happiness. Which it's not just a far out idea, is that nowadays there are, I can't speak for the medical world, again, I'm not a doctor, but there are many doctors, and there's much medical knowledge that point to the mind-body connection and psychosomatic illnesses, which is something Rebbe Nachman spoke about already way before its time, which is really incredible because I'm reading this book over here, and he brings all sorts of proofs from Freud and this and that to talk about how there's such thing called psychosomatic. And I'm just thinking over here, wait a minute, Rebbe Nachman says it. He says it right away. Kol hacholos ba'in rak mekilkol hasimcha. People become sick it gets increased, it gets exacerbated because they're not happy, right? So we don't need Freud or anyone to tell us that. We have Rebbe Nachman here right away. Now, let's go further into the screen share. Okay. Now he's going to explain how this all works. There are 10 different types of music, Smicha, right? Which is an aspect of happiness. And just to preface this, the first Rashi in Tehillim says that Tehillim was written corresponding over the 10 Lashonos of Nagina, the 10 types of words there are for music, which is bracha, maskil, ashrei, nitzuach, mizmor, right? So we have 10 words for song, which is amazing. Like they say, Eskimos have a lot of words for snow because that's something that's important in their culture. We have a lot of words for music because music is important in our culture. There are 10 different types of music which are happiness. Kemoshe Kasav, like the pasuk says, Ale Asor ki simchatani Hashem b'fa'alecha. On the 10-string instrument, because Hashem made me happy. So Ale Asor, the 10-string instrument, Rebbe Nachman sings that there's 10 different types of music. He's bringing that as a proof. The Elo Yud Minei Negina, and these 10 different types of music, Ba'in Mitocha Sar Minei Defikin. These, I'm going to read and then explain after I read. So if it's not clear, hopefully we'll get clear as we read more. The Elu Yud Minei Negina, and then these different types of 10 types of music, Ba'in Bitocha Sar Minei Defikin. They come into the 10 different types of heartbeats. Behei Mechayin Osan, and that brings us alive. The Al Kain, Kishiyesh Kilkol Upigam Be'asimcha. Therefore, when there is a damage in a person's happiness, Shehi Bechinas Yud Minei Negina, which corresponds to the 10 different types of music. Therefore, it comes sickness and illness into the 10 different types of heartbeats. That got ruined through the 10 different types of music, which is Simcha. Again, I'm just going to read a little bit more and then we'll explain. Because all sickness is incorporated in the 10 different types of heartbeats, which gets destroyed. Oh, sorry, I skipped the line already. Because all sickness is incorporated in the 10 different type of heartbeats. And all different types of music is incorporated into the 10 different types of music. And according to the damage and the destruction that a person had in their happiness and in the music, therefore they get a sickness that corresponds to that. And also the doctors, they've explained this, like I was mentioning Dr. John Sarno before, but obviously Sarno lived after. That all sickness comes a person through depression and sadness. And simcha is considered a very, very big healing. So let's just explain all that. See, my camera keeps going out of focus over here, but whatever, right? That Rebbe Nachman is saying like this, that there are 10 different types of music, right? That we said that the Hillim starts with Ashrei, Bracha, Maskil, Nitzuach, Nigun, Shir, right? These are 10 different words. Music makes a person dance. They make you happy, right? So these 10 different types of music correspond to the 10 different types of happiness, right? If you listen to music, a person gets happy. Now, Rebbe Nachman introduces something called the Isar Minei Defikin, the 10 different types of heartbeats. We have a Kabbalah from the Arizal that Reb Chaim Vital brings that indeed we actually have 10 different types of pulses. Now, if you ask me, I feel my pulse, it feels the same, right? I cannot tell you what the difference between the 10 different types of heartbeats are whatsoever. Actually, someone told me in India there are people that could check your pulse and tell you what type of heartbeat you have. Again, I don't know what that means. But apparently, we have 10 different types of heartbeats. And therefore, when a person's simcha, when a person's happy, they draw that energy into their vitality, into their heart. As we say, a person's heart is pumping. He's full of life, right? When a person starts dancing and a person feels with simcha, so they feel sort of elevated, as if a person say like, I'm pumped up, I'm ready to go. So what happens is when a person's lacking in their Smicha, they're lacking in their heartbeat, that withdraws the energy from their heartbeat, from their pulse, and from that comes sickness. From that comes physical maladies, right? So this is really an incredible thing. And just to explain this, a little bit, more, that it's brought down again in the Al-Pi Kabbalah, not that I know much Kabbalah at all, but Al-Pi Kabbalah, it's brought down from Reb Chaim Vital and the Arizal that our 10 pulses, it comes from Hashem created the world, and he was mitzamtzin his creation. He was mitzamtzin, he constricted his Elokus in order to allow us not to overwhelm us with his Kedusha and allow us to exist in this world. And what he did is the same way the physical world, which we're a part of, he constricted his light in order for us to be able to tolerate his light, in order for him to be able to, so to speak, allow his presence to be experienced. So too, when it comes through us, one of the ways Hashem's life force and energy gets drawn down into the world is through our pulse, right? That our pulse, the fact that our heart beats is seemingly brought down, that our pulse is really one of the interfaces that Hashem uses to integrate his spiritual lights down into the world. That through our pulse, through our heartbeat and the rhythm in our body, right, somehow that is one of the ways that Hashem uses in order to draw his life force down into this world, right? So like the way I like to think about that is, and this is rooted in Kabbalah, that it's brought down, and again, that the 10 pulses correspond to what is known in Kabbalah as the partsuf, the interface, the spiritual edifice known as Abba, as this masculine form that it's like this raw energy, this raw potential, the raw light of Hashem, the light that comes from the spiritual world known as Abba, gets drawn down through the Asar B'nai Defikin, through our pulses, and that how is one of the ways that Hashem, again, brings his spiritual light down into the world. Now, what does that mean for us? And without all the fancy Kabbalistic terms. And, again, I'm not a doctor, so I'm speaking here with a little bit of reverence. I'm just trying to explain what Rebbe Nachman's talking about. But basically, our heart beats. How does that work? Does anyone really know how our heart beats? Like, what keeps the heart beating, right? It's spiritual. It's ruchnius. Like, the more a person understands the way the body works and the miracles that are happening every day within inside our body, that there's a clock and then it stops. And how does it all work, right? So that itself, our heartbeat it's totally divine, right? And if anyone would think, no one knows when the clock is going to stop. And if anyone would really think about our hearts, the very fact that our heart beats, it would lead, all roads, I say, would lead back to Hashem in that way. So Hashem uses our pulses as a way to draw his energy down into the world. And as Rebbe Nachman is saying, that when a person is lacking in their happiness, so a person just feels totally lethargic and they feel overwhelmed, and then that healing that a person needs to do becomes very, very difficult to do. And I'm not saying people don't suffer. I'm not trying to make light of it at all in any way, shape, or form. But what I think here is that there's a lot of hope here, because anyone who's suffering medically or anything like that, as this whole book was written on this topic. This is about Rebbe Nachman's lesson we're talking now. And this whole book, Dr. John Sarno, is really written about the same topic also, right? There's tremendous amount of hope here and healing that a person can do when a person acknowledges their feelings and they use this time of a sickness for spiritual healing in order to take stock in themselves. And that when a person feels happy, somehow that happiness draws down light into their life. It draws down light, and it actually has the ability to bring them to healing. And so we have some questions over here. Your class are can you upload them to Apple Podcasts? If you want to set it up, I'd be happy. But we could talk about that after. And let's go back into the screen share. Going back into the screen share. Thank you for the compliment also. Okay. Villa Usid. Now he's going to talk about it in the future. Villa Usid tisgadel hasimcha me'od. And in the future, happiness is going to increase in the world, right? But Al Kain Amru, I'm just going to interject over here, that it says in the future, what does Yeshaya Hanavi say? He says that the blind are going to see, right? And the lame are going to walk, right? Which means there's going to be a complete happiness. There's going to be a complete recovery that comes down into the world through the Asar Minei Defikin and the Asar Minei Niguna. That there's going to be so much happiness that gets spread in the world, and therefore, as a manifestation of a tikkun of Abba, of a tikkun of the happiness and the Asar Minei Defikin, which obviously correspond to the Esther Spheros, right? That there's going to be such happiness in the world. The byproduct of that is the blind are going to see and the limp are going to walk. Let's see what Rebbe Nachman says, right? And in the future, happiness is going to be great. Therefore, Chazal say, in the future, Hashem is going to be at the head of the tzaddikim, the Rosh Chole. He's going to do a whole play on words over here. The Rosh Chole, the head doctor to the tzaddikim la'asad level. The Hainu, sheyase mocho latzaddikim. Hashem's going to make a circle for the tzaddikim. Hold on, I see it's a little bit cropped out over here. Let me just fix that quickly. Okay, there we go. The Hainu, sheyase mocho latzaddikim. Hashem's going to make a circle for the tzaddikim. V'hu yisparach yeh rosh chole. And Hashem is going to be at the head of the sick person. Again, we'll read and then we'll explain. Ki shchina l'mayla miroshav shel chole. Because the Shechina, Hashem's divine presence, resides on the head of a sick person. K'moshe darshu Rabbeinu Zal, like Chazal say, shene'emar Hashem yisa'adenu al eres dvai. Hashem had sustained me al eres dvai when I was on my deathbed. Ki ein lechole shum chiyas, because a sick person feels no energy. Rak hashchina mechaye oso. Rak the Shechina, the divine presence, Hashem, sustains that person. And in the future, through happiness, yistaken kol cholas, all sickness will be healed. Then Hashem will be at the head doctor or the head healer or the head of the sick person, the Hainu Rosh Hamachol. He'll be at the head of the circle. Because happiness is the antidote for sickness. And because of this, nikrayin hasimcha v'arikudin chole. And that's why happiness and dancing is called chole, kihim tikkun cholas. Happiness is called a machol, a circle, and dancing because it's a tikkun for sickness. Now let's just explain. I know it's a whole mouthful every time. But Rebbe Nachman said it in a few words. It's like a whole world, you know? It's incredible. So Rebbe Nachman's explaining over here that in the future, the whole world's going to get healed. And this is what it says, La'asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu lasos mocho latzadikim. In the future, Hashem's going to make a circle and dance with all the tzaddikim, right? Now he's explaining the word mocho, that Hashem's going to make a circle dancing with all the tzaddikim. That comes to the word chole, that Hashem's at the head of a chole, that Hashem's at the head of a sick person. What is the dancing and the mocho, the dancing, the circle, and being at the head of the chole, being at the head of a sick person have to do with each other? What's the play on words here? The play on word here is through dancing, through happiness, through simcha, then a person is able to become healed. That when a person feels happy and they embrace what's happening to them and they're able to overcome the anxiety and the worry and the difficulty and the physical ailments and the challenges, and even so they grab emunah and they grab onto happiness with that, then in the future, when all that is revealed in its full manifestation, then a person is going to be healed. That's what it means that Hashem is at the Rosh Chola, the head of a sick person. And this is also what it means that in the future, Hashem is going to make a circle for the tzaddikim, because through dancing, like we learned last week, right, dragging sadness into the circle and having it flip to happiness, through dancing, that's going to bring the tika and hacholas. Through happiness, that's going to bring healing to everyone. Now, I know it could be hard to hear for people struggling, obviously, but people, especially nowadays, there's so many struggling with COVID and other types of illnesses, that when a person goes with emunah and a person goes with faith, so it becomes easier when the anxiety and the fear grip you and they take you over, it just spirals downwards. It makes it very, very difficult to deal with. And I remember hearing, even right when COVID hit, Rav Moshe Weinberger, I heard a quick audio from him, and he was saying that when a person's fearful, that's when all the sickness creeps into a person. When a person feels calm and they try to calm themselves down and they try to go with emunah and they try to make themselves happy, that's the best protective measure they have. And this is what Rebbe Nachman is talking about, preventative medicine in many ways, right? That when a person is happy, when a person feels secure, that's, he says, a mitzvah gedol lios b'simcha. It's a very big mitzvah to be happy. B'kol ha'cholos ba'en rak mekil kol ha'simcha. And all sickness comes from lack of happiness. So a person sees that they get totally run down and they get sicker and sicker and sicker. But a person who's able to not just fake it, but deeply have a positive attitude, then it becomes easier. And this is what it says also. It's worth it to mention that the Gemara brings that Chizkiyahu HaMelech actually had something called the Sefer HaRefuos, a book of remedies, and that Chizkiyahu was ganuz, he hid the Sefer of remedies. So this is a wild thing, that the Gemara says Chizkiyahu had a Sefer that had all the antidotes to all the sicknesses ever, apparently, right? And what did Chizkiyahu HaMelech do? The Gemara says he was ganuz the Sefer HaRefuos. He hid the book of remedies. So there, again, there's much ink on this topic over here. But one thing that I saw explained, I saw it over here in this book by Rav Avraham Greenbaum. It's called The Wings of the Sun, Traditional Jewish Healing in Theory and in Practice. Based on what we're talking about now, is he says that Chizkiyahu hid the Sefer HaRefuos because he was trying to show people that in many ways the true refuah comes from emunah in Hashem and comes from being happy. And people, he writes that people were becoming too reliant on just going to the book and getting healed. And he said that really, he goes on to explain at length that how really healing comes from emunah, comes from happiness, and comes from a not running yourself down. Okay. We're gonna go a little bit weiter over here. Back to the screen share. Okay, V'aklal. Now he's gonna further talk about happiness. V'aklal. Shetzarich lehiskaber me'od b'kol. Now this is like classic Breslov now. You ready? V'aklal. Shetzarich lehiskaber me'od b'kol ha'kochos lios achsameach tamid. A person needs to strengthen himself with all his energy to be unbelievably happy constantly. Kiteva adam, because the nature of a person is limshoch atzmo lemara shchora va'atzmos machmas pigare umikre hazman. That a person, we feel drawn after sadness and depression because of the different happenings that happen throughout a regular day. V'chol adam male yisurim, and every single person is filled with pain. Al kain, therefore, tzarich lahachriya es atzmo. Therefore, a person needs to force himself to be super happy always. And make yourself happy with anything that you want. Even with acting silly. We're going to come back to that, acting silly. So again, a person should try at all, even to make yourself happy with this famous thing that he says, with b'milei d'shtuta, with silliness. Shegam leiv nishbar hu tov ma'od. Of course, having a broken heart is very good. Im kol zehu rak ez be'ez shah. Nevertheless, you should only have a broken heart for an hour a day, right? Because he writes in another place, if a broken heart is very close to depression, that a person who breaks their heart too much, they might fall into depression. So therefore, you should only break your heart for a little bit every day. And it's fitting that a person should establish themselves 1 hour every day, to break their heart, and to break your heart and do hispaitis and speak to Hashem in your own words to Hashem. Like we've explained many times. But the entire day, a person needs to be super, super happy. Because from a broken heart, it's very easy to become depressed. More than a person falls through depression, they won't fall with happiness, chas v'shalom. Which means, like, if you're happy, okay, you'll fall a little bit, but it's not going to be too bad. If you're depressed, that's the pits. And then a person comes to holiless, frivolity, chas v'shalom. Because leiv nishbar, holus is similar to leiv nishbar, but it's not mar shchora. Al kain tzarich sheyeh b'simcha tamid. Therefore, you need to be really happy. Ki v'sham yuchedis yeh lo leiv nishbar. Because and rak b'sham yuchedis yeh lo leiv nishbar. Only for a brief moment in time, you need to break your heart. This is unbelievable, right? So let's recap. A person needs to make themselves to be really, really happy every day and distance themselves from sadness. And now Rebbe Nachman goes on to say over here, even be acting silly, even what he calls mile de shtuta, right? Just act silly, get yourself out of yourself. Like, like I think of going like, blah, 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 or, just acting totally, totally wild and silly with mile de shtuta in order to relax yourself, to calm yourself down, and to just lighten up a little bit. And so much we take ourselves so seriously and everything that happens so seriously that what happens is that it winds up making us very heavy-minded, and it winds up making us depressed. And Rebbe Nachman is saying, avoid depression at all costs. Do whatever you need to do. Of course, he's not saying drugs here, right? But do whatever you need to do to make yourself happy, right? Better to be happy than to fall to depression. Because once you fall to depression, boom, you're done. You're not going to be able to do mitzvahs. You're going to start doing all sorts of aveiros. So it's better you act silly. Better you take time to relax. Better you take care of yourself and do the things that you need to do. A friend of mine, he told me, what does he do for Mili de Shtuta? When he does his this and he's feeling really down, he tries to do a handstand. Anything just to wake himself up again, to act silly and to have a good time. Because again, once you fall to depression, it can become very, very difficult to break out. So Rebbe Nachman is warning us, and Rebbe Nachman is urging us to be super, super happy and to live with Simcha, to really, really live with Simcha. Any, guys, this is great. Any questions, comments later to the editors? Anyone want to add anything? It's funny, I think, like, he said these such simple words, mitzvah gedola liyos b'simcha. Like, why would you need to be told that, right? But yet, we still need to be told that.
Why is it a mitzvah?
Why is it a mitzvah? Okay, I'll take a lot of ink has been written on this question. Why is it a mitzvah? I think because it's like the mitzvah of emunah, right? It's not necessarily counted in the monea ha-mitzvahs. It depends who you go by, but not all the Rishonim count emunah as one of the 613. The reason for that is because it's one of these things that supersede mitzvahs. That when a person's, it's like the derech eretz kadma Torah. When you're not happy, you can't do mitzvahs. When you're happy, it becomes very easy to do mitzvahs. So therefore, he says it's mitzvah gedola liyos b'simcha. It's a very big mitzvah to be happy and distance yourself from sadness as much as possible. And like, what I like about these words is, even though I keep coming back to them, it's simple, right? It's just so simple. Just it's something that's so obvious, but yet we need to be told it over and over and over and over and over again, as we've been learning in all these pieces over here, and have we've been learning through all our shiurim, how much we need to give ourselves permission to be happy. How much do we need to find our good points, our nekuda tovas? How much do we need to learn to go softer on ourselves and treat ourselves gentler and treat ourselves nicer and value ourselves than go hard on ourselves and really run ourselves down? And when we start running ourselves down, even our mitzvahs even our mitzvahs become difficult, and we don't want to do them. It's like the Reishis Chachma. He talks about Ava and Yira. That Ava and Yira, love and fear, are like wings of a bird that are able to take our mitzvahs and bring them to the places that they need to go and really elevate them. And when we do mitzvahs without Ava and Yira, love and fear, our mitzvahs don't necessarily go to the necessary places where they need to go. And, I think that really is happiness. Simcha, could be just tie that all together, like when you're b'simcha, it's easy to do mitzvahs with Ava and Yira, love and fear. Mitzvahs don't become a burden. They become fun, and mitzvahs become enjoyable. But when we're depressed and we're down, so our mitzvahs don't go to the right places. They don't go to the right targets and the areas that we want them to. So again, Rebbe Nachman's coming along and saying, mitzvah gedola lios b'simcha. It's a very, very big mitzvah to be happy, right? We can't stress this enough. Like, we do so many mitzvahs and we're not even happy for it, right? So you have to ask yourself, what's all my mitzvahs worth if I can't even be happy with a single mitzvah? So Rebbe Nachman is teaching us to take time, talk to Hashem, have emunah, don't run yourself down, have milei deshtuta. Silly, right? Just act silly. There's nothing wrong with acting silly. Parenthetically, we have some people making silly faces. Parenthetically, I know the people in the shiur, on the shiur live know this, but the people that are going to hear this shiur recorded don't know this. My family has a weekly newspaper between all their cousins. It's a wonderful thing. It's called the Family Fuse. And every week, my nieces do it, my nephews do it. It's all my siblings. Everyone's involved with it. And we read the Family Fuse every week. And there's, my father writes When I Was a Young column, and my mother writes Granny's Wisdom. And kids write interviews. What did this cousin do that week? What did this family do that week? That every week we read it at the Shabbos table. And I instituted into the Family Fuse paper something called Shaya's Papaya, guaranteed to make you laugh. Ho, ho, ho! Well, it's a weekly joke section where I put silly jokes in there, and none of the jokes are really too good. Maybe I'll do another video just on the jokes. I used to hate facial hair, but then it grew on me. I know it's terrible. You heard about the guy? You heard about the guy who had his entire left side chopped off? He's all right now. Or the guy who cut himself chopping onions? Yeah, he's got greater problems. Get it? Greater problems? I know. It's horrible. But the point is that you have to have milei deshtuta. You have to have stupid jokes. Okay, they're not funny, but they make you smile even for a second. Rebbe Nachman says, mitzvah gedola lios b'simcha. Even milei deshtuta. Even silly jokes that are really bad. Like, why are trees so suspicious? Because they're shady. I know, it's terrible. Anyways, it's always good to have milei deshtusa. It's always good to act silly and just to lift yourself out of yourself, because so many things we run ourselves down, as Rebbe Nachman says, that it's such a big mitzvah to be b'simcha, even through milei deshtuta, even through silly jokes. I can't even get a laugh from my family with these jokes. All my kids, and including my wife, like to roll their eyes at me, but we put the jokes in the column anyways in the Family Fuse newspaper, because that's a good thing to do, because we have to take Rebbe Nachman's words of mitzvah gedola lios b'simcha, and even through milei deshtuta, very, very seriously. We have to take it very, very seriously to stay away from sadness and to make ourselves alive, bring ourselves energy, and in ways that we know how to do. And so I give everyone a bracha that we should stay away from sadness. Everyone should come to a complete healing. Everyone should come to refuah shalema, and we should be zocheh to take milei deshtuta, We should find the good in ourselves. We should understand that true healing comes from emunah, and anxiety and fear runs us down, that we feel like we have nothing left of ourselves, and we should make ourselves alive to be able to do life. Now, in the next year, I'm going to end with this. In the next shiurim, Rebbe Nachman and Reb Nassim take this little lesson over here, and we started last week because it's piggybacked with last week's shiur. Again, it's 30 pages in Likutey Halachos, and this little yesod that he's talking about the Sarminei Defik and the 10 different types of heartbeats, and Simcha, and the 10 different types of music, there's Sarminei Nagina, we're going to see this on a whole new level. We're going to see how this plays into the Tikkun HaKlali, Rebbe Nachman's general remedy. We're also going to learn about how this corresponds in Rebbe Nachman's story of the 7 beggars. On the last day, there was a beggar with no hands who was able to retract all the arrows, the 10 different types of arrows with the 10 different types of poison, because he knew the 10 different types of wind. We're going to see how in the future, how Simcha, all sadness connecting with last week, is going to flip to happiness. And Amir Tashem, we're going to do a few shiurim on this little piece over here. We're going to see in Reb Nassim, and it's just exciting. It's all very exciting stuff, everyone. So I wish everyone to have a good Shabbos.
Excellent.
Anything to add? Anyone want to add anything?
Yeah.